Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating intersection of acoustic science, fan history, and vocal anatomy to demystify how Freddie Mercury's legendary voice actually worked. I mean, we all know those soaring highs of Bohemian Rhapsody, right? And the gritty, raw power of We Are the Champions. But what was physically happening inside the throat of Queen's legendary frontman to make those sounds? Well, we're going to look at the hard science, the intense superfan pushback that followed, and the beautiful operatic intervention that ultimately saved one of rock's greatest instruments. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so if you know anything about Queen, you've definitely heard the myth. The idea that Freddie Mercury had this superhuman 4-octave vocal range. It's practically foundational to his legacy. But is it actually true? Let's see what happens when acoustic physics collides with rock and roll mythology. For decades, fans and music critics alike described his vocals with this exact, awe-inspiring quote, "A force of nature with the velocity of a hurricane." It's a great description, but back in 2016, a team of researchers from Austria, Czechia, and Sweden decided to put that legend to the ultimate scientific test. They wanted to figure out the actual biomechanics behind the hurricane. And when we compare those long-held myths to the hard data, the results are honestly pretty shocking. By analyzing isolated vocal tracks, the researchers concluded his range was actually 37 semitones, specifically from an F-sharp 2 to a G5, which is completely normal for a healthy adult, not the mythical 4+ octaves everyone talked about. But here's the real twist. He was likely a natural baritone who was intentionally forcing himself to sing as a tenor. Add in a vibrato that was unusually fast and highly irregular, and you've got a voice that was remarkably unique, but also incredibly fragile. So how in the world did he achieve that famous rock growl? Well, the researchers actually filmed a modern rock singer imitating Freddie at over 4,000 frames per second, and they discovered that Freddie was driving his vocal system past the red line. It's kind of like revving a car engine way beyond its intended limits. He used this technique called subharmonics. Basically, he wasn't just vibrating his regular vocal cords, he was actually engaging his ventricular folds, or false vocal cords. That is an extreme technique. It's practically unheard of in Western pop music and is actually way more similar to Tuvan throat singing. Crazy, right? But as we know, science is really only as good as its data set. And just as the scientific community was settling on this whole baritone theory, the hardcore fans stepped in to do a little crowdsourced peer review of their own. The fans over on the Queen Concerts forum quickly pointed out a massive, glaring blind spot in the study. The researchers had strictly limited their data to isolated studio vocals, mostly a cappella versions from box sets. One fan bluntly summed it up perfectly. They obviously didn't listen to live recordings. He sustained BB5s easily. The scientists had completely missed the stratospheric, improvised notes Freddie was throwing out in the heat of a live concert. And those superfans, they brought the receipts. They quickly produced the missing live evidence. For instance, in Tokyo in 1979, he hit actual whistle notes during the instrumental section of Don't Stop Me Now. That very same year, he effortlessly dropped E6 and F6 notes while improvising Get Down, Make Love. And then in London in 1984, he hit another F6 during Under Pressure. I mean, this crowdsourced data completely blew the study's conservative F-sharp 2 to G5 range out of the water. Freddie's unscripted live performances proved his instrument was far more expansive than anyone realized just listening to studio tracks. To really understand why his voice was so elusive to scientists, we have to contrast how he evolved over time. In the 1970s, he utilized a lighter, mixed voice, this beautifully clean, airy falsetto. But by the 1980s, Freddie adopted a massive, booming, macho, full-chest voice. And look, belting out heavy rock in a full-chest voice, especially when you're a natural baritone forcing a tenor range, takes immense physical force. It sounds incredibly powerful for sure, but it is dangerously unsustainable. And we can see exactly how that physical toll built up over his career. As early as 1975, Freddie actually developed vocal nodules, which severely limited that light 70s falsetto. As Queen toured relentlessly into the 80s, his intense lifestyle kind of acted as a numbing agent, completely masking severe vocal pain. By the 1984 Works tour, that heavy chest belting and a total lack of rest pushed his voice right to the brink of ruin. He was barely hanging on. But then, in 1987, everything changed. Right when his voice was facing a disastrous decline due to all that over-singing, an unexpected classical crossover project became his saving grace. Freddie, who was a lifelong opera fan, finally met his idol, and it completely reshaped how he used his instrument. So in 1987, Freddie collaborated with legendary operatic soprano Montserrat Caballé to write the theme for the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. He co-wrote the opening track with Mike Moran, and while working closely with Caballé, she actually shared proper classical warm-up methods with him. But you know what the biggest shift was? Because Caballé expertly covered those soaring, stratospheric soprano parts, Freddie no longer had to strain. For the first time in years, he could just drop down and sing comfortably in his rich, natural baritone voice. And this duet was an absolute triumph. When Barcelona first released, it smashed into the UK singles chart, peaking at number 8, and its legacy only grew from there. Following his passing, the song was heavily featured at the 1992 Olympics and was reissued, climbing even higher to number 2 in several countries. It was just this massive commercial validation of his true, natural sound. The beautiful irony of this whole operatic healing is that learning to embrace his natural lower register unlocked his final vocal masterpieces. By stopping the endless chest belting, he delivered these stunning, matured vocals on his later work. Tracks on The Miracle showcase a much healthier technique, and his crooner-style baritone on the Made in Heaven album proves that his lower register was just as captivating, if not more so, than his forced rock screams. So it leaves us with this final, remarkable thought. The ultimate secret to Freddie Mercury's legendary voice wasn't just a physical anomaly or the extreme physics of subharmonics. It was the courage to strip away the rock bravado and finally accept and master his true sound. It really makes you wonder, if a classical soprano hadn't convinced a rock star to embrace his natural voice, would we have ever heard his final masterpieces? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking questions and keep listening closely. Catch you next time.